Looks like one of those mythological stories out of the Bible, right? Oh yeah, sure. Fire comes from heaven. Yeah, tell me another one. And I'll be honest with you, Matt, when I was growing up and, reading Genesis 19 and stuff like that, it was a challenge to my faith. I'm like, okay, come on, really? This really happened?
So today I really want to talk about some of the stories in the Bible. Like, there are times where even myself, as I read them, I'm thinking, did this actually happen the way it did? It says it did, because it's so larger than life, so unbelievable, and just hard to imagine. So let's think about the splitting of the Red Sea, where in my mind the entire ocean gets split to the side and there's just huge walls of water. You could see fish still swimming right beside you as you walk through that path. Did it really happen that way, or is it over exaggerated? Did Noah really build a big ship and put all the animals on it? Was the world really flooded? Did all these larger than life things actually happen the way the Bible portrays them to happen, or at least the way that I imagine them happening? Well, today let's look at a video and an article that can prove that Sodom and Gomorrah happened the way that the Bible says it happened. All right, so first let's take a look at the title of this article. So, the scientific meltdown over a controversial discovery of biblical Sodom. So right off the bat, that tells you that the scientific community cannot handle the fact that there is scientific proof of Sodom. Let's continue to read. Okay, so it says, what everyone agrees on is that something unusual happened at Tal el-Hammam, an ancient settlement near the Dead Sea. In a layer of ancient earth, archaeologists claim to have found evidence of an apocalyptic event: melted rooftops, disintegrated pottery, unusual patterns in the rock formation that can be associated with intense heat. For another 3 to 6 centuries after 1650 BC, the settlement's 100 acres lay fallow. But when Stephen Collins, the principal archaeologist at Tal el-Hammam, considered the scientist evidence in an article that ran last year in the respected scientific journal Nature, he claimed that the incineration matched with the place and timing of the biblical account of Sodom and Gomorrah. This brought down on himself what in academic circles might be called hellfire. So I just want you to think about that, because a lot of people say that they will believe in God if you can just prove that he exists. Obviously, even when science backs up the existence of God, that isn't enough. Now, let's go ahead and jump into this short clip so that we can further discuss this discovery.
What about things like Sodom and Gomorrah?
Sodom and Gomorrah. That is one of the most sensational stories.
Sum it up for those
recent
who
history.
Not as aware as they should be.
Yes. Okay. I mean, so Sodom and Gomorrah, it looks like one of those mythological stories out of the Bible, right? Oh yeah, sure. Fire comes from heaven. Yeah, tell me another one. And I'll be honest with you, Matt, when I was growing up and, reading Genesis 19 and stuff like that, it was a challenge to my faith. I'm like, okay, come on, really? This really happened? Or are we supposed to understand this? Something else. But, several years ago now, maybe like 15 years ago, I was at the Society of Biblical Literature, which was being held in that year in San Francisco. And I was in one of these, conference rooms, and I just wandered into this session because it had an intriguing title, something about archaeological discoveries at Tel El-Hammam in Jordan. I thought, well, I'll walk into this, because a lot of these conferences at the Society of Biblical Literature, like these ideologically driven, post-colonial, feminist, whatever, interpretation of this, that, or the other thing. So I like to go to ones that are actually about language or history or something. Somebody actually dug something up and we're talking about data, So this archaeological session, I wander in, I start listening, and as I'm listening to this presentation for about 45 minutes, near the end of it, I began to realize, oh my gosh, these people presenting think that they have found the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what they're saying in a really roundabout, really understated way. So at the end of the presentation, they stop the presentation and they open up for questions, and they describe these 2 city mounds that they had found on the Jordanian side of the Jordan River, and in this destruction layer and so on. And so I raised my hand immediately and I said, well, did you find any arrowheads? The reason I asked that, Matt, is when you have a destruction layer of an ancient city, if you find arrowheads in the destruction layer, it means that an army caused the destruction, and they were shooting arrows at the defenders and blah, 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 blah. If you find a destruction layer and there aren't arrowheads, that means an army did not destroy the city, and then probably it was some kind of natural event.
So let's talk about a few things that he said. So for one, he's saying that they're going a roundabout way of saying that they found what they think could be the biblical description of Sodom and Gomorrah. So they're reluctant to admit that the actual scientific facts and the geological facts point towards the Bible being right. Most likely because these people are atheists. And I'm learning a little bit here because he's saying if there's not evidence of arrows and stuff like that in this area, that means that the fact that an army would have destroyed the city is ruled out entirely.
Right? So I'm curious, like, what destroyed these two cities that you guys think are Sodom and Gomorrah? And so the researcher starts to get very bashful when I ask this question. He says, well, I didn't really want to go there, but all I want to say while we're recording this session is that it was a heat event. And there's like 20 other people in the room, and we're like looking at each other like, a heat event? Like, is that like a wardrobe malfunction? Like, what is a heat event? You know, like, okay. And then he stopped the recording, and like the official session was over, you know, and so it was like off camera at this point. So all of us in the room, like, mobbed the guy at the front, like, okay, you know, tell us what's going on. And so
The fact that he calls it, it's just a heat event. His unwillingness to call it what it is, because he still doesn't want to believe, though, even when people have the evidence of God right in front of them, they still want to deny the fact that it exists. It blows my mind. Let's keep on going.
So this researcher, Stephen Collins, he's from a southwestern university in the U.S. here. He says, okay, so we get down to this destruction layer of this city that we're beginning to think is Sodom, and we pulled up a piece of pottery, and when I looked on one side of it, I thought, oh no, our research is ruined, because I saw that it was glazed, and glazing wasn't invented until the Ottoman period, or at least the kind of glazing that he thought he saw. And the Ottoman period is like 1000 AD. And if you're pulling that up, that means you've got contamination in your archaeological dig. You got like later artifacts down there. But then he turned the pottery over, and on the back of it, it was typical Bronze Age pottery, but it was glazed on one side and not on the other. Like, what on earth is going on? So make a long story short, he sends this away to a lab in the U.S. and for testing, and they come back and say, well, that glazing is trinitite. Okay, great. What's trinitite? Well, trinitite is that glass layer that you get when you basically set off an atomic bomb in the desert, and it melts the glass, and you get a kind of crystalline formation that's called trinitite. So this pottery was raised to over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit for a brief moment of time. Like,
So the point in time that he's talking about, there was not atomic bombs, right? And you have to, I just still can't imagine somebody so unwilling to believe, just because when they do believe, they have to self-reflect on themselves. So as long as they still just keep pulling their own wool over their eyes, they don't want to see, even when the scientific facts point towards, hey, this is exactly what the Bible said happened. It is like an atomic bomb went off in the desert, and they still don't want to believe. I don't know. These people are crazy.
oh my gosh, this is what's going on. So they continue to bring up this glazed pottery, and eventually what they discover is, among other things, they also begin to find human remains. They find human skeletons that are complete up until about halfway up the backbone, and then there's just a scorch mark, and there's nothing on the top of the body. And they find the skeleton behind a wall that's about, 4 feet high. So what's going on here? Well, long story short, they find massive evidence that a huge heat blast from the sky at about 25 degrees above the horizon incinerated these twin cities on the Jordanian side of the river, just north of the Dead Sea. Yeah. And they have the artifacts to prove it.
And again, the reason it has to be from the sky?
What's that?
The reason it had to be from above
Because
is
of the angle, like they have these human remains that apparently were standing upright behind a wall, and
I
everything
see.
above the wall was incinerated, and they do like the angular calculations, and they can see, oh, that blast was coming like this, so they can calculate the angle at which, and the stuff when they find the stuff in situ, and they've got a scorched side or a melted side, again they can triangulate where this was coming from. And so long story short, from a natural material, explanation, this looks like a meteor blast,
Okay. That's what I was about to ask. What was the naturalistic explanation?
Like in Tunguska, I think it was called Siberia back in the 1800s. There was this, massive meteor blast that flattened, several hundred square miles of taiga, of, northern Russian forest and so on. And, when a meteor comes into the atmosphere, it heats up and then explodes, and it can be like an atomic blast. But again, the timing and the location and the cities all track with what is described of Abraham and Lot in Genesis 19 and the surrounding chapters. And then the Bible talks a lot about Sodom and Gomorrah for centuries thereafter, all the way into the prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah continue to mention Sodom and Gomorrah. This stuck in the cultural memory because this was a major world historical traumatic event. For us, like the Two Towers.
So I haven't studied it a whole lot, but I know that there is so many archaeological evidence of the Bible actually being true. A lot of the scientific community know this and still continue to say that God is not real. They continue to say that the Bible is not a book to be trusted. Yet you have stuff like this that comes to light all the time. But people would still say not to listen. Why do you think that is? Leave it in the comments.
Was going down, like this major disaster where these two cities were entirely wiped out by a heat blast from the sky, by the hand of God, as it were. But no historical source records this, even though Sodom and Gomorrah were arguably the two most powerful cities in that entire region. They were at a trade route, from going from east to the west, from Egypt out to, the Far East, and everything was passing through there. So very powerful, very wealthy cities. And only the biblical record, has a historical account of this, meteorological, geological event that we can now attest that tracks with the time period and the description. And also that blast going up creates a great vacuum, which then recollapses and pulls all kinds of salt sediment from the Dead Sea, and then slams it on that location that was in the bullseye of, and that's where you get, the discussion of, became a pillar of salt, and all the hellfire, the brimstone, that was all torn up by the blast and redeposited over the cities. So it's absolutely fascinating. If folks can look this up, I'm not making this up. Steve Collins, a very reputable archaeologist from something like Southwestern Methodist University or something like this. You can look online. Just go to Amazon and type in the discovery of Sodom and Gomorrah in his book. I forget the exact title.
Thursday's on it.
But you can find it and put a link to it.
Wow.
And that really changed my perspective on the Old Testament, Matt, because what it pointed out to me is things that sounded too outlandish to be history, that even I as a believer was tempted to discount, suddenly and sensationally shown to be, actually that's a historical event.
Now, do you think it was a meteor? Do you think that a Christian can say it was a meteor and it's God using the meteor to...
Absolutely.
I see.
I think this, I mean, the providence is in the timing. I mean, that's the timing of God. It's like
if you're a sinner and you walk into a church and get struck by lightning. Something
right.
Like
So towards the end there, he hit a little bit on of what I was talking about at the beginning. A lot of the Bible, especially Old Testament, some of the New Testament, people rising from the dead, the Red Sea splitting, Sodom and Gomorrah being turned to fire and brimstone, some of that stuff is hard to believe. But whenever there is scientific evidence of all of these things happening, the evidence points towards that without a doubt, these things happened exactly the way the Bible recorded it, it makes it hard to not believe what the Bible says. Because if one part of it's true, I feel like all of it has to be true. If it's being recorded accurately, even the most bold claims like an entire city turning into fire and brimstone can be scientifically proven, what is the chance that the rest of it is just wrong? We know that God was going to preserve his word, but sometimes people that think more scientifically, that consider themselves a real philosopher, sometimes in those conversations, especially if you're trying to evangelize to these people, sometimes this type of stuff is what you need to bring up. Maybe show them this video, show them that there is actual scientific backing of the Bible being a historically accurate book. And I feel like when things like this is discovered, we can use this whenever we talk to people, especially one-on-one with people that have a hard time believing the Bible is real. Show them stuff like this. I know there's stuff out there showing that the flood is real. I know there's stuff out there showing that a lot of the Bible is real through archaeological discoveries. So using this in our conversations as we go through work and school and just life in general to get people to believe in the Bible, I believe it can be used as a very powerful tool. So next time you're talking to somebody and they have trouble believing the Bible is real, just show them this video, show them the science behind the Bible, the archaeological proof behind the Bible as a tool to get people to understand that God is not a liar. He left his book behind so that we could get closer to him. He sent his son so that he could die for us, so that we could be closer to him all the time. And that's what I hope that making these videos and sharing stuff like this will do. Give people the tools to go out and help other people believe in the truth so that they too can be saved. All right, that's all I have for you today. If you want to help out the channel, make sure you like and subscribe, share the video so it gets out to more people. Leave a comment below. Tell me what kind of videos you want to see. Tell me if you want me to react to something specific. If you'd like to support us financially, you can join our Patreon. Only do so if you pray about it first and God puts it in your heart to do it. And as always, keep on the full armor of God, and I hope you have a blessed day.